The year is 1991.
Now, this is an especially tense night for military families here in Hampton Roads.
Movie of the year is here. It's Beauty and the Beast.
Just peaking.
An entrepreneur named Vince Perry in Miami finds a mysterious bootleg NES cartridge and buys it for his son, who loves video games. The NES cartridge was a multi-card, a cartridge chock full of illegal NES games to play, and Vince was absolutely astonished by the thing. All these games on one cart for one price? Something like this could potentially make millions if more people were aware of it. And then he got an idea. What if I were to purchase fast food and disguise it as my own cooking? Vince wanted to create his very own multi-card, with brand new original games that could be legally sold on the NES, but he had no game development knowledge or any skills. Lucky for him, Vince had met a worker fresh out of college at a recording studio named Mario Gonzalez, who offered himself and a few of his college friends to help make Vince's idea a reality. Using their game development knowledge, they threw together a quick prototype Tetris clone named Megatris, and Vince was beyond impressed, and immediately set them to work on his vision. Almost immediately, the guys started facing numerous problems, working with the NES hardware, coming up with all the different games, and to top it all off, you want to talk about crunch culture? These 4 developers, fresh out of college, only had 3 months to finish all 52 games, which is a monumental task for any developer. They spent day after day, from sunup to sundown, working and crunching on these games, on top of having to deal with Vince's crazy money-making schemes involving the entire ordeal. He established Active Enterprises, a surefire next big player in the gaming industry, even though his development team consisted of like 4 dudes fresh out of college. After the 3 months were up and multiple issues came and went, the game was finally complete, and the devs were each given a little over $1,500 for their hard work. The game was then packaged and sold, without any sort of testing done on it, for $200 US. The final product of all this was Action 52, considered to be one of the worst games ever made. A collection of thrown together, buggy and all around not very fun games that will leave any person questioning why did they spend any amount of money on this. Some games crashed after certain levels, some games didn't even work, and one game, meant to be for a contest, always crashed before you could even reach the end of it to enter said contest. The entire package was awful. But Vince didn't care, because at the end of the day, he had a trump card. One that was guaranteed to break the bank for him, despite the majority of Action 52 being garbage. Very close to the end of development, Vince wanted them to focus all of their attention on one game, which he intended to make the magnum opus of the entire package. He had planned an entire franchise around it. The Cheetahmen. The concept was created around the Ninja Turtles phenomenon that was big in the late 80s and early 90s. You know, when a ton of other companies also attempted to make various anthro groups of attitudes and awesomeness. This was another one to add to the pile. But Vince was convinced that these guys were gonna be huge, the next big thing. He was so adamant, he had commissioned a comic book to come with every copy of Action 52 to detail the Cheetahmen's backstory, and even advertised Cheetahmen action figures and toys coming to a store near you. He also had a commercial for Action 52 commissioned, putting the Cheetahmen front and center of it.
I say, dear chaps, shouldn't you go on a diet?
Are you talking to me? Maybe if these guys would make these holes bigger, I could fit easier, know what I'm saying?
Hey, man, I'll help you out.
No, Aries, no.
Come on, guys, we have work to do. We come from the Action 52 game world where every game is...
Yeah, we're talking action and lots of it. We got space, dragon, adventure, even war games.
Yeah, dude, we even got rescue games, and man, they're smooth like ice.
Hey, what about you guys?
Oh yeah, we're in there too, the Cheetahmen.
Yes, but that's another story. If you want the ultimate game challenge, you have to get Action 52.
Of course, history had different plans. Action 52 was a complete failure, and the Cheetahmen never took off, as it should be. But Vince had one more project in the works, and that was Cheetahmen 2, a standalone sequel to the original one in Action 52. This one was even buggier and more busted than the original. Yet again, no playtesting went into this one either. The most notorious glitch in the game is after you beat the second boss, the game just traps you on this screen forever, with no way to access the last 2 levels of the game. And this, right here, is where the Action 52 legacy ends. Well, where it was supposed to end, anyway. Due to the failure of Action 52, Active Enterprises shut down, and only 1,500 copies of Cheetahmen 2 were made, and they were all recycled from the old Action 52 carts, and then they were stored inside of a Florida warehouse, and they sat there for years, meant to be forgotten by the world. Until some people discovered said games inside the warehouse in 1996, and very quickly the game became a sought-after piece of gaming history. Every copy you're going to find of this game is going to sell well into the thousands, and for a broken, unfinished piece of plastic that you couldn't even finish. Now that the game was out to the public and being sold around game collector circles, let's flash forward to the 2000s. In places all over this newfangled internet thingamajig, people found out that talking and trashing old games is actually really fun. It was a pastime that people would do, just play some old crappy games and make fun of them for entertainment for you and your friends. This actually gave these horrible old games new life in a way, and as they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Action 52 was one of those games people were discovering and seeing how horrible it was. But there was also someone else on the web who had a huge following online who was about to look at the game and expose it to millions. Ass! This is probably a big reason you clicked on this video. I don't need to introduce James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. You all probably know who he is. But despite being one of the most recognizable internet figures ever, he has stayed mostly controversy and drama-free. Keyword, mostly.
One of our writers had somehow added a portion that was taken from a pre-existing article. That's unacceptable, and all of us here apologize for letting that sneak in.
When it comes to James's controversies, many usually think of either the Screenwave stuff or the Ghostbusters incident, which was the biggest nothing ever. But many forget that there was another controversy he was involved in years prior, and I'm here to shine a light on this forgotten controversy. In April of 2010, the AVGN would review Action 52 and the Cheetahmen to his massive fanbase, giving the game a ginormous boost in popularity and notoriety across the entire web. You can actually see on price charting when he reviewed it. It gave the game a spike in prices on the retro game market. Holy crap! As of the making of this video, the Action 52 and Cheetahmen videos are some of his most watched videos ever, with over 24 million views combined. Now more people than ever were aware about this game and the Cheetahmen, and well, some people lurking in the background saw potential to cash in. You see, Active Enterprises and the Cheetahmen were no more, but the name and intellectual properties were still floating around. They weren't being used, but they sure as hell had notoriety attached to them. One day, from one entrepreneur to another, the Active Enterprises name had been purchased, and Active Enterprises Ltd. had been changed into Active Enterprises LLC by a mysterious new face named Greg Bobbage. Greg's origins are mostly unknown. He himself is mostly unknown, but he claims he had a hand in the distribution of the original Action 52, and that's basically all we've got. Greg had gotten his hands on the Active Enterprises name and was going to do something with it and the IPs on hand. And in 2011, he created the website CheetamenGames.com, a website telling you the story of Action 52, its infamy, and newfound success. Greg had gotten a hold of an old prototype of Action 52 due to his connections and decided to put out an NES reproduction called Cheetahmen The Creation, which was an old prototype of the original Cheetahmen now available to the public.
Just play it. You'll know what to do.
There were also upcoming projects like iCheetah, which I don't think ever actually came out. What it could have been? Not a clue. How long ago Greg bought the rights to Active Enterprises names and products, and how long he's had this cooking, is unknown. It was no doubt riding off the newfound popularity of Action 52 after the AVGN video, because the website was registered only a few months after it came out. So Greg is now basically trying to sell one prototype game out of a collection of 52 busted ones for like 40 to 50 bucks, and all the talk and popularity around it is about how bad it all is. How the hell do you sell that? Well, really, all it takes is to be a really good businessman and to have a lot of money and sway. Greg knew the best way to get eyes on his stuff was to get a hold of the growing popularity of online influencers, and so he kind of wormed his way into that space, starting with a channel called The Game Chasers. The Game Chasers were a couple of guys going around Texas, searching for old retro games to avoid spending absurd amounts of money on them, a hustle I can very much relate to. Greg had gotten into contact with a friend of the Game Chasers to come over, and then the friend got into contact with all of them and invited them over to his mansion to look at Action 52 memorabilia, and potentially a business proposition.
You were talking about the Angry Video Game Nerd. I've got, here's the original artwork for his Action 52, the little placard that they use at the beginning of the...
How did you get this?
I bought it on eBay, and I just missed the Cheetahmen one. So what I've done is I have tried to collect every copy, every variation of Action 52, and I'm putting that together in like a museum display.
Finally found one.
You finally found it.
Not many people will ever run across one of these, especially complete, and I have one in my hands, Pat.
And you will be checked on the way out.
What Greg is doing here is called networking. Greg is able to butter up the Game Chasers.
Come on, you can at least make with two, really? I mean, do you really need that many Action 52s, Greg? Do you really need that Greg, if you're watching this, do you really need that many Action 52s?
The Game Chasers are friends with Pat the NES Punk, another retro reviewer from around the time, and Pat is friends with James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. He even appeared on an episode of that as well. Through networking and a ton of cash probably tossed around, Greg was able to get into contact with the guy who kickstarted all this back into motion, and was able to convince all these retro reviewers to help advertise and promote his upcoming project. Greg had admittedly a pretty nifty idea. He wanted to make Cheetahmen 2 more widely available to the public, since it was one of the rarest and most sought after games on the NES. And also fix the glitch on level 4 that made the game impossible to beat, so you could now finish the whole thing, if you would want to finish an objectively shitty game anyway. But instead of just doing it by his own volition, like the previous one, he decided to go for crowdfunding. And thus, the Cheetahmen 2 The Lost Levels Kickstarter page was launched, with a video starring all of your favorite 30-year-olds.
Player die. Oh, player die. Cheetahmen 2. Why am I so haunted by that game? Action 52. Cheetahmen, it would have been right. Someone took the game.
Look what I got.
Where'd you find that?
I didn't find nothing. I caught some nerd slipping. You want to play?
Dude, that's one of the rarest games in existence. You don't just stick it into a Nintendo like it's ice hockey.
I don't see what the big deal is. It's a game. It's meant to be played.
First called it.
I don't know what it is, but something about the acting in this video just seems off. These guys had already been in plenty of videos, so they sort of know how to act, but their deliveries at times just seems not very genuine?
No!
There's also a lot of awkward silence in some of these scenes.
Hey guys, how's the game going?
Ooh, pancakes.
Not to mention, Greg himself is no actor.
Has this ever happened to you? You paid $39,000 for a game on eBay, or you swiped it from a nerd, and you get it home and the game doesn't even play all the way through. Unfortunately, there are not too many gamers who can afford to pay $39,000 for an NES game, especially one that doesn't even work. Let's fix it.
Greg somehow even got into contact with all 4 of the original developers of the game to help sell it even further. Seems innocent enough, right? Nice old man trying to put an awful but rare game into the hands of more people?
Are you saying that this is a fixed version that I can play all the way to the end of the game? Well, lucky me!
Pat, you haven't been playing that old glitch version, have you?
I'm fine. I'm not asking about the game just because Giant Catman jumped out of the TV. That'd be absurd. You guys are vegetarians, right?
But as this was all revealed to the public, people were polarized. There were a handful of red flags for this project. The most obvious was, why was the nerd now advertising a game he had called complete shit? The Cinemassacre website was now plastered with ads for this game. You couldn't really escape it. All these guys knew these games were bad, but now, here they were shilling a Kickstarter by a guy nobody knew. He just owned Active Enterprises now and wanted to start selling Cheetahmen products again. Was he a trusted individual? And another thing was, why exactly do you need $65,000 for this? I mean, yeah, cartridge costs and shipping costs, but remember, Greg had already done this once before with Cheetahmen the Creation, and he didn't need a Kickstarter for that, he just did it. Why do you need our money this time? The Kickstarter rewards were the typical thank you message or a t-shirt in the comment to go along with it, and it gets to ludicrous levels where for a couple $1,000 you could get autographed copies of the awful games by James and the others, and for the highest tier, you get everything, and you'll get flown over to Texas to hang out with the Game Chasers and Greg. Yeah, just fly over to Texas and hang out at this old dude's mansion. That's not weird in the slightest. My favorite thing about this entire Kickstarter is, Greg's computer seems to have a stuck caps lock because everything, and I mean everything on this Kickstarter page is in all caps. All of his responses to all of the backers come off as needlessly aggressive. But really, this entire Kickstarter is unnecessary. I don't really think he's struggling for money right now to fund any of this either, as he's living in his fucking mansion with games worth hundreds sitting on his kitchen counter. A lot of people thought something was very fishy about this entire Kickstarter, and they made their voices heard.
Mike, you should be ashamed of yourself along with James.
We don't need it. We don't need fucking Cheetahmen 2 to be re-released with the lost levels.
As a fan, I can't help but just feel just slightly disappointed in the way that, like, James and Mike and Matai have completely allowed themselves to be involved in something that will pretty much affect their fans in the worst way.
You owe us, James owes us, everyone involved owes everyone that donated, that had to watch this, that had to see James's name dragged through the mud willingly by him, might I add. You all owe us an apology.
There was a lot of criticism and accusations, but most of it was directed towards James Rolfe and his crew, who were seen in much higher regard than the other people in the video, and they had believed he had finally sold out, to a scam in a lot of people's eyes. Greg was selling people genuinely awful games for a higher price than what was needed, and James was helping him.
Whatever the case, you're the one who has to complete this game. You gotta do it, because right now, that game in its unfinished state is like a turd that's halfway out the ass. Shit the turd, get it over with, do it so this game will stop haunting all of us. Shit the turd and do it for all the gamers.
But Greg insisted that all the money was needed.
That brings us to a total of about $44.50 for each and every one of those 1,000 cartridges, or $44,500. Now, is there a profit margin involved in that? Sure, we're going to have about $20,000 left over to pay for a lot of those miscellaneous costs that aren't enumerated in this list.
It also didn't help that people had dug into Greg's past, what little there was, and found out he had got himself involved in a court case, being accused of fraud, of all things. But he was ruled not guilty. It got to the point where the irate gamer made a video dunking on the entire situation, trying to cash in on that 5 minutes of fame where he, for once, wasn't the bad guy.
Donate $1 million and I will actually send you a bowel movement, and you'll love it because my shit does not stink. So donate now, or I'll have cartoon cheetahs pixel demons jump out of the TV and beat your ass.
Okay, Chris. I'll give you some credit for having the balls to take potshots like this. You win this one. But your time is coming very soon, bucko, so don't get too big for your britches. With them backing a potential felon, this is probably the most amount of backlash James and his friends had ever gotten. And really, I don't think they knew how to handle it. They started deleting comments and any criticism towards the project, and people started taking notice of that as well.
Why are you deleting comments? You were deleting comments left and right that were trashing this whole campaign. Isn't that just basically an extension of you supporting this to keep things under wraps? Like, shh, don't bash this. We want to raise money for this. Shh.
And enough criticism was flung at them that the famous writer of Loca Bendito, Mike Matei, stepped in to finally address what was going on. He explained, yes, they were deleting comments, but apparently neither of them really had a clue as to what was going on. They had no idea about Greg's past involving fraud, and he wants to remove the video, but they're contractually obligated to keep it up. So it looks like things are going to continue to go forward. There was nothing, legally speaking, they could do. So the Kickstarter continued, and by the end of it, they had managed to rake in a little over $94,000 for the campaign, so it was successfully funded. No matter what people actually wanted, the Kickstarter was a success, and this awful game was going to have a second life, in the hands of many more people, that is, if Greg were to actually deliver them. As time went by, updates came and went, and it seems Greg did keep true to his word, and the copies of the game did get shipped to most of the backers when needed. There were issues here and there, of course, but there is a final product. And the final product itself is, well, the backers started getting their copies and sticking it in their Nintendos, only to find out the game is still a buggy mess. It's still the same awful, glitchy game it once was, but hey, you can play all 6 levels of the game now, and you don't need to spend your life savings to do it. To be fair, they never said they were going to fix all the glitches, just the one major one. Or actually, did they even do that? It's widely believed this isn't even an original fix for the game, as there was a ROM hack of the game that fixed the glitch that had already been out for a year at that point, made by one dude for completely free, and some people believe they just used that hack for the end product. Even if that's true, the game is still complete garbage. But more than likely you already knew that before buying it. But at least Greg did deliver on his promise, as small and basic as that promise was. He didn't take the money and run, which is very rare on Kickstarter. But at the end of the day, he probably had the funds to make this all come to fruition without Kickstarter, and this is more than likely just a way to get some cash under his belt and get his name out there for future projects, since he had now established himself to a ton of people. But whatever plans he would have had after this, I think he decided not to go through on. I think this entire ordeal likely left a sour taste in his mouth, because after this, nothing else has been done with Active Enterprises or the Cheetahmen since. His website is still up, still telling you the story of Active Enterprises, and still allowing you to purchase your own copy of the Cheetahmen games, but other than that, it's been radio silence. Since Greg was rather old back in 2012, I wondered if he may be retired or even possibly passed away. I found his LinkedIn and he still seems to be kicking, still owning a bunch of stuff, and he's still the president of Active Enterprises. What a title to behold. And so ends our tale of the Cheetahmen conspiracy. What a complete mess this was. Everyone came out of this controversy basically unscathed. Jace would get roped up into other things, but is still doing AVGN to this day. Well, after selling his soul to the devil, of course. Pat the NES Punk does mostly podcasts now. The Game Chasers are still chasing to this day. Greg Povich is still somewhere out there doing whatever.
Listen and heed my request, O Cheetahmen God. Please.
The Action 52 developers are out there, probably living normal lives and probably only take it back on the whole Active Enterprises thing as a fun little story to tell. But Vince Perry, the man who started everything, is, according to one of the developers, no longer with us. He may have left us, but man did he leave a very interesting impact. God bless, like and subscribe, and good night. And remember, my friends, your money is your money. If you feel like spending it on trash in game form, you have the right to do so. But that money would probably be better off spent on food than for a terrible game never meant to see the light of day. Make the right choice.
And when you pause the game, you get this catchy beat.